Content is intended to provide accurate information, however, is not intended as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult a financial, legal, or tax professional for specific information regarding your individual situation. Opinions expressed and provided are for general informational purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security.
Cornerstone Retirement Partners presents Your Course to Retirement with Grand Rapids Certified Financial Planner Ron Corser and Nolan Gosley. Cornerstone Retirement Partners are planning today for the potential of tomorrow.
And welcome into the program. This is Your Course to Retirement. Grand Rapids, your resource for that common sense approach to planning for our financial, our investment, our retirement future that we all need. Brought to you by the team at Cornerstone Retirement Partners. Today with us, we have CFP Certified Financial Planner, Ron Corser. And Ron, always a pleasure to have you here on Your Course to Retirement. Thank you.
Well, good morning. Another Sunday morning, Peter. It's nice to see you and hear you. And folks listening to today's program, it's nice to know you're tuned in on your way to church or just hanging out in the backyard, getting ready to just chill. You know, I still keep looking back over the past 15, 16 months and think, my goodness, it seems like it's brand new to be able to just walk outside. So I hope everybody's enjoying the good weather. Yeah, it's a little warm, but as I tell people, February is coming again in Michigan, and that's going to be a really interesting experience. So I think we're going to have what I think is a pretty good program today. But I had an interesting conversation with somebody who a few weeks back called our company after the radio program was done, and they came in for their first appointment with us. And we had a nice long talk. And one of the things that he asked me, he says, Ron, how do you come up with all these new topics on your show? And I said, you know, I really don't. And he kind of looked at me quizzically and said, what do you mean? Don't you come up with new topics every week? And I said, no, what really happens is we just take another chew, so to speak, or chop on the old log of what we always talk about. We just take the same approach. Here's the topic. Let's look at it from a different way. And he said, well, doesn't it get really boring? And I said, no, but let me ask you a question. Have you taken any action on any of these topics? And he kind of was quiet and smiled, and he said, no, that's why I'm here to talk to you. And I said, see, it makes some sense. Repetition does make sense. There's only so many things you can talk about in a great big world of financial planning and retirement income planning. It's not an encyclopedia of things. There's some basic underlying concepts. There's different ways to talk about them and to approach them. But the key really is, I guess, if we hear it long enough, then we may take some action. I know my wife would agree with that wholeheartedly because she has a tendency to say, you know what, I've been telling you about that one thing all year. You never did anything about it. And your friend comes by and just mentions it, or Nolan says something and you do it. Why don't you listen to me? And I kind of laugh and I said, Nancy, I do listen to you. I've been probably thinking about this for a long time, but whatever Nolan said or whatever somebody said to me was the last piece to pull the trigger, so to speak, to make me do something. And she looks at me, and I don't think she believes all of it, but I think she wants to. So I just keep saying the same stuff over, and we'll get through this together for the next 50 years of our marriage. It's just kind of interesting. So there are only, ladies and gentlemen, there are only so many ways you can talk about retirement planning, income planning, stock market investing. And if you grab hold of the important information, the really basic stuff, and then kind of step into the water and do something about it, that's what makes the difference. You know, I listen to a lot of people who say, Ron, I listened to your program. And I say, well, what did you find interesting? Well, everything. And I say, I appreciate that. But is there any one thing that applied to you? Well, it could be this, it could be that. And I said, well, what have you done? Well, I'm still thinking about it. Okay, I'm good with that. But the point is let's talk about the same stuff from a different direction, because maybe by approaching it from a different direction will make all the difference in the world for you folks out there listening to today's program to kind of decide, yep, today's the day I'm going to do something about income planning, or I'm going to do something about my estate, or I'm going to do something about something that's really important that I've been putting off. So that's what today's program is going to be talking about, is same stuff, different day, but good stuff, different day. Right.
Well, Ron, I do believe that's important. I mean, I've seen in other places and heard and read that the first time we hear a message, we hardly even notice it. The second time, we don't know it's there. The third time, we may actually pay attention and be cognizant. And it's not until like the 20th time that we hear something or have that message repeated that we say, yeah, that is something I actually need to act on, and then take that action. And they say, habits take at least 21 days to form. Good habits are harder to form, I think, than bad habits, but they take that amount of time to form. But it's all about that repetition. We need these messages and important topics discussed maybe in a new way, as you said, kind of recycling some, reusing some, repurposing some material. But if we have not taken action on these important topics that you talk about, and in order to improve our financial future, maybe we need to hear that message again, to just put it very bluntly. And that's why I think that you're here on the radio, giving this information, but reminding people of how important these topics are, and continuing to remind them. And I think Nancy would agree, maybe it's not until the 20th time that you are told something that you end up acting on it. And maybe it was Nolan that told you that 20th time, Ron. So that's why we're here, continuing to repeat these same topics. And
Nancy
talking about
isn't here right now, because she would be jumping up and down saying, yes, 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 yes.
Well, she should tune in into the program. Maybe she's doing that at home. So
when she listens to this program, she'll probably jump up and down and say, see, I told you so.
Indeed.
Anyhow, I love her dearly, and she's a good help to me. She really is.
And very patient.
Yeah, she really is patient with me. I mean, it's incredible. Sometimes I look at her and I think, wow, living with me is no day at the beach. You're still here. This is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So we just keep going on, I'm so glad she's forgiving.
The thoughts that run through us guys' minds that we never vocalize on a normal basis.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, hey, Ron, before we jump in, can I give out the phone number if folks want to talk about any of these important topics? Ladies and gentlemen, get in touch with Cornerstone Retirement Partners by visiting the website online, cornerstone-rp.com, cornerstone-rp.com, or giving a call if you would like your specific individual course to retirement, that document, the plan in your hands to help you map out your financial future. Give a call to 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581. And Ron, another factor that I think has helped people be more aware and take action on many of these important topics that you've talked about and repeated over the course of this program is the reports that you offer, these documents, these white papers, these reminders of here are the important factors that you need to address. And we're going to fondly refer to these as the countdown to retirement, because you've got a list of 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 of these, all kinds of different reports. But as I was thinking about this, the actual process of getting ready for a countdown, a blast off, a launch of the space shuttle may begin decades, years ahead of when the countdown starts. So while I think all of these are important countdown issues, the real preparation needs to begin well ahead of time, doesn't it?
It really does. That's a great point. It's never too late to plan. We hear that a lot. Sometimes people will come into our office, I'll meet them for the first time, and they just say, I've done a terrible job. I haven't done anything. And I just say, wait a minute, time out. You're not allowed to do might've, coulda, or shoulda. So let's just start with where we are, and we'll just start working forward from that point of view. And people talk to me and they say, well, what should I be concerned about? There's a lot of things to be concerned about. There's a lot of things out there that we have to deal with every day. And what I tell people is approach it this way. Ask yourself today, what is the main thing? Of all the things I've got to focus on, what is the main thing to focus on? Because the main thing is probably the most important. And it's the same question you can ask yourself as you're planning for that wonderful thing called retirement, or maybe you're already in it and you just don't feel comfortable with your plan. What's the main thing? And that's what we help kind of figure out. What's the main thing? Because we know in life, if we tackle the main thing, there'll be another main thing coming down the road. But we focus on what's really important. So ladies and gentlemen, give us a call at 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581, and we'll talk about the main thing. So what is today's main thing? It's really simple. The single biggest financial risk we fall into or we experience. That's the main thing. And what is that? It's something called longevity. What is that? That's not living too long. I tell people, living too long, no, that's not the right way. Living a long life, fulfilling, a long life that was kind of created in a way to give you security so that you can enjoy other things and be helped other people, to take care of your family, to enjoy retirement. The main thing to focus on in retirement planning is living a long, long time. Why? Well, if somebody retired at 65 and they think you're only going to live another 6 months, you don't really have to do a lot of planning, do you?
No.
But if you retired, say, at age 65, and you may live another 30 years, that says, wow, the main thing really is longevity. See, living a long time is not a curse. But what living a long time does is it makes every other kind of smaller risk factor multiply. Bad markets, sequence risk we've talked about, the fear of running out of money or not having enough money or income in retirement to maintain your lifestyle, having a healthcare consequence to show up. Those kinds of things, the longer we live, the more likely the potential for it to happen. So the main thing is, how do we deal with all of these other smaller, perhaps, things under the big umbrella of longevity? And that's what we help folks figure out. That's the main thing. If we're going to live a long time, what are the things that we have to plan for to make sure that living a long time is more of a blessing than anything else? So give us a call. If you think, here's a great lead, and if you think you're going to live a long time and God's going to let you live a long time, come and see us. We can help develop a plan for you that says, okay, we're going to live a long time. The number one thing we have to do to deal with this issue of living a long time or longevity is have a really, really solid income plan in retirement. A really solid income plan, ladies and gentlemen, in retirement is what helps slow down the risk or eliminate the risk of longevity, of living too long, of perhaps having to readjust downward our lifestyle because we don't have enough money, or having a bad healthcare occurrence happen to us or our spouse going forward. So longevity is the big deal. It's the main thing. How do we deal with it? With an income plan that makes sense to everybody and makes sense for you in your own particular situation. That's what we're good at doing. So give us a call. If you'd like to explore this a little further in a lot of depth, give us a call at 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581, or go to our website, Cornerstone RP, plug in your name, you say, I want to talk, or I have a question, and we'll get back to you very quickly to help you out. It's our job to help you with this.
Yep. And as we have talked about these reports and counting down toward retirement, Ron, this is number 2. So we're getting real close to blast off into retirement here, or even already retired. We still have to have an answer to address this, but it's 2 questions that are going to determine your retirement. Number 1, what's the one most important factor? That is longevity. What's the greatest risk? And then 2, how do we address that greatest risk? So we've got to have a plan for how to address what can potentially be the greatest risk. And as you said, we turn what should be a blessing into a blessing, or make sure it is, so that it's not something that is a curse for us throughout the duration of retirement.
Yeah, the worst thing that can happen in retirement is people worry about their money. That's a terrible thing to have happen. I go back when I think about my mom and dad. I talk about my mom, who did about 49 years at General Motors. She was a Rosita Riveter. She came up from a little town in Vittendale, Pennsylvania. After she graduated from high school, got a job at GM on the line. And pretty soon we got involved in World War II. I got pictures of her sitting on top of a tank because that's what they were making in the Cadillac factory. So my stepdad, he did about 45 years. He took some time off for World War II. So when they retired, what did they face? They had paid off the house, which for them was the biggest deal in the whole wide world. We actually had a big party that we threw when they paid off the mortgage. And they retired. And I know things were a little different back then, but the basics are still the same today that they were back then. What do I mean by the basics? They assumed they were going to live a long time. And they knew they needed money because they weren't going to go back to work. So what did they have coming in? They had a pension plan, which was really great from GM. They had Social Security. Now, those two things combined come into play we call predictable, protected income. It's going to keep coming as long as they're alive. Fortunately for them, I know living standards were a little different. Things were a little different back then. But they had also saved some money. My mom, believe it or not, has saved close to $100,000, which was an enormous amount of money in her eyes. But their Social Security and pension plan took care of their basic living needs. That was their income plan in retirement. Those two items, for the two of them, recreated their income in retirement. They had enough income in retirement to maintain their lifestyle and actually have a little money left over. Now, they weren't extravagant. They didn't need the vintage Maserati or stuff like that. But they traveled to Florida. They went there in the wintertime. They went there, took the kids to Disneyland, went fishing up northeast Jordan 2 weeks out of the year. They did all of those cool things that people like to do. Why? Because they knew every month they had all the money coming in that they needed, all the income in retirement to maintain their lifestyle. So in essence, they had really solved the puzzle of how do you deal with that thing called longevity. There is no substitute for a really well-built structured income plan. And what I mean by that is not an income plan that says, well, I got $1 million and I should be able to take 4% out of there and be okay. That's really not an income plan. That's a plan built on, I hope the market keeps okay because then I can get the money I need. That's not an income plan. An income plan is something where you lay out every expense that you have to cover because your expenses in retirement aren't a percentage of your life savings. You still have to pay for housing. Whether your house is paid for or not, you still have to fix it up every once in a while, put in a new furnace, do all of those things. You still have to pay insurance. You still have to buy groceries. All of those expenses in retirement are not a percentage of your life savings. They're fixed. Taxes are fixed. So you have to have an income plan that covers all of that.
And the longer you go, Ron, the more likely those are going to be more and more expensive and that you'll have to do them a couple times.
And we know that already. Anybody that has been kind of paying attention to the last 2 years know that cost of things are going through the roof. So we know that's going to happen and continue to happen. So the income plan is the single most important missing piece sometimes in somebody's retirement plan, because the key issue is if I'm going to live a long time, I need enough income in retirement to maintain my lifestyle and pay all my bills. It's not more difficult than that, ladies and gentlemen. So give us a call if you have an interest in talking with us about this. We can help kind of take away the cloudiness and some ideas, bring some clarity to some other things, share a couple strategies with you that may make sense for you. But it's always going to be built around what you want. So give us a call at 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581, or go to our website, Cornerstone Retirement Partners, plug in your question, and we'll get back to you just as quick as our little bunny feet can make it go.
616-301-2581, 616-301-2581, or online, cornerstone-rp.com, cornerstone-rp.com. Ron, if we backtrack a couple of the steps in this countdown to retirement series of reports, you had another one that was the 6 core issues that every plan must address. As you're looking at those 6 core issues, are you looking at all of these through the light, the scope of longevity and how longevity impacts each one of these issues?
I do. And one of the first things to consider is who's your advisor? It's important to ask advisors some questions. And one of the questions is just say, tell me what your philosophy of investing is. Tell me what your philosophy with the economic world is. there's two ways to approach things. You can say, well, you're going to be well diversified. Always trust the market. I believe in the market. I've heard people tell me that's what advisors have said. I believe in the market. I trust the market. I'm not in that camp. I've been doing this for 26, going on 27 years, and I'm not sure the market's my friend. I think what's important is to try to figure out how to make a buck in the market without going broke or getting harmed. So knowing what the philosophy of the advisor is really important. I share ours with people. I believe that the most important thing when it comes to investing in the stock market is to make sure you truly understand how much risk you're taking on. We can help measure that. Most people don't realize it, but you can measure risk statistically. You can figure out if you have, the answer to the question, how much risk do I have in my investments? And most advisors say not too much because you're diversified. You got stuff all over.
But you can actually quantify that.
We can quantify risk. We can show you by the numbers. It's like a speed limit. So, the answer to how much risk you have, not too much, does not too much mean, well, when the market corrects, will I lose 5% or 55%? You need to know that. You need to know, and I'll give you a great example. I have some clients, and I won't share their names because everything we talk about is confidential. What happens in our office stays in our office. But sometimes we have some clients that go to the casino. And I'll use my brother as an example instead of clients. My brother and his wife, before the COVID thing hit, they would go to Las Vegas twice a year. And I asked my brother, Rick, I said, Rick, how do you do out there? I mean, what do you do? He says, well, I know how much I can lose. And I said, well, how much is that? And he told me, and I almost lost my breath. And he says, but I do okay. And I said, what does that mean? He says, well, I usually win a little more than I lose, and it's fun. He said, but my wife, she always loses. So I said, well, does she know how much she can lose? Well, yeah, because she takes the money out there and she loses all of it every time we go out. And I said to my brother, I said, Rick, how does that make sense? If you know how much you can lose and that's about what you lose, why don't you give the money to me? And I'll send you a book to read or something like that.
Well, then he couldn't enjoy losing it, Ron.
They enjoy the atmosphere, yeah. And nobody likes to lose, believe me. So it's kind of like that. Sometimes I'll ask people, and this is an interesting question an advisor should ask you, how much of your money you're willing to lose? I have never met somebody who has said, well, I'm willing to lose half. Most people say, I don't want to lose any. And so the question becomes, okay, if you don't want to lose any of your money, as a certified financial planner, as a fiduciary, I have to say to you that the safest place to put your money then would be in places where you can actually legally use guarantee. And that's either in bank with FDIC insurance or in principal protected fixed annuities. You can legally use the word guarantee and your money will be pretty safe in those things. But if that's not the rational strategy for you, then we have to figure out how much risk really makes sense to you. And some people can say, you know what, if I can just make 2% over inflation, I'm going to be happy. And when we do the income planning, we find out that 2% over inflation will give them all the income they need in retirement to retire. So think about this. We just discovered for this pretend couple that 2% over inflation, in addition to the pension and Social Security that they have, will give them every month all the money they need in retirement, all the income they need to pay their bills, maintain their lifestyle, and they really don't have to worry about a market correction. Nobody likes it, but they're not going to have to worry about a portfolio that's going to lose 40 or 50% if something happens. So, ladies and gentlemen, if thinking through this idea of how much income do I need in retirement, how much risk am I willing to take? What does my advisor think about risk? What's his philosophy about it? Give us a call, 616-301-2581. We'll help sort through these issues. These are really important questions to have answers for. So give us a call, 616-301-2581.
Well, again, if you need help, if you need answers to those questions, pick up the phone, give a call, 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581. And the philosophy, Ron, I mean, not every advisor has the same philosophy. Not every advisor has the same set of tools. Not every advisor is the right fit for all stages of your financial life. So you may have had a great advisor during the accumulation phase. But as you transition, potentially your needs change and their philosophy, their approach does not.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's important to, the key question I guess to ask is, Peter, I was interviewing you to be my advisor. The question I would ask you was, if I entrust you with my life savings, are you going to help me manage the investment strategy, create a written investment plan for me? And that, are we going to consider what we're going to do if we have a catastrophic healthcare event? How I'm going to manage healthcare costs over the next 25 years, even if I don't have to go into a facility or have something major happen? Are you going to help me with that? Are you going to help me figure out a tax strategy for my investments? You know, some places they say, just talk to your tax advisor. Well, we're able, we actually have some great software that we can do some really serious tax planning when it comes to, should you convert some of your IRA into Roth money? Should you invest in this particular strategy versus this one? Which one's more tax efficient? Those are important questions to ask, because in retirement, taxes are just another cost, ladies and gentlemen. They're nothing more sophisticated than that. So we can create those kinds of plans and help you ask the questions of us. What's important? Because we'll go through the questions even if you don't ask them. We have these questions and we think they're that important. We'll go through it even if you don't talk about it. So how do we control volatility? Inflation's going up now. What are we going to do about that? How do we deal with that? Most people think, well, the best approach to that is in the stock market. But what happens if the stock market, here's a key question I asked somebody. And we're going to take a real quick break and we'll come back with the answer. If you're concerned about inflation and you look to the stock market to be the hedge against inflation, and the value of your portfolio, because the stock market corrects, goes down 10%, just lost 10%. Have you stayed ahead of inflation? Now, when we come back from the break, we'll answer that question, and maybe all of you already have an answer for it. But give us a call, 616-301-2581, and we'd be happy to help you answer that and a whole bunch of other questions.
Well, we do need to take a quick break, but we'll come back. We'll talk about more of these key issues and the countdown to retirement, the topics that you need to have addressed, the risks that you need to have identified and defined your approach to, with certified financial planner Ron Corser here on Your Course to Retirement. And they do offer to put together a course to retirement for you, a specific plan for your financial future, for your situation. If you'd like to take them up on that offer, pick up the phone now, give a call, 616-301-2581. That's 616-301-2581. Quick break. We'll be back to answer those important questions.
Cornerstone Retirement Partners presents Your Course to Retirement with Grand Rapids Certified Financial Planner Ron Corser and Nolan Gosley. Cornerstone Retirement Partners are planning today for the potential of tomorrow. Visit cornerstone-rp.com for many valuable resources, including those mentioned on this show and other great episodes of Your Course to Retirement.
And we're back here on Your Course to Retirement. Ron Corser, ladies and gentlemen, Grand Rapids, your resource for a common sense approach to planning. He is your CFP certified financial planning resource here on Your Course to Retirement, one of the partners at Cornerstone Retirement Partners. And we have been talking about the countdown to retirement, some of the big issues that you must address, the 6 core topics that every plan should cover. And we talked about one of the greatest risks to your retirement being longevity and the fact that you need to get to know your advisor. But we've talked about taxation and inflation and market volatility and these low interest rates. Ron, market volatility is something that we have actually not seen a great deal of so far this year. About a year and a half ago when COVID hit, there was a lot of market volatility, but so far so good this year, and we hope it stays that way, but we know at some point in time we're going to see it again into the future.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the question we just had before we took our break, if you lose 10% of the value of your portfolio and you believe stocks are the greatest hedge against inflation, my question is, if you lost 10%, have you stayed ahead of inflation? Most people, if they think through that question, the answer is no. And the reason I bring it up is not to confuse people, but to understand that dealing with inflation, there's just not one specific solution. Because ultimately, the key to dealing with inflation is to make sure your income in retirement goes up. Now, you don't spend percentage changes in your retirement portfolio. You spend real assets, you spend income. So one of the key determinants to taking ahead of inflation is to make sure you have a written income plan that provides for increased income by month or by year to kind of take the bite out of the inflationary problem. You don't deal with it with, I hope the market goes up 20 and then we'll take care of it. It's the income plan that's key to dealing with inflation.
If we look back historically, Ron, when inflation has been higher, and the most notable time that we can recollect and think about that is it's always referred to of the 1970s. We had very high inflation. The market did not go up during that period of time to help people keep up their purchasing power. On the contrary, the market fell when inflation was higher.
Oh, that was a terrible time. That was stagflation in spades, so to speak. Inflation was rampant. I remember, and I'll digress and tell you an interesting story. I was in a different industry back then, and I got a job offer to move to Chicago, and with a really big bump in pay. I didn't believe anybody would ever pay me that much money. I was just stunned. And so we got there, and I remember I had promised my wife that we would never again live in an apartment. We'd always buy a house. So we took a look at housing prices there. And remember, mortgages were in the 12 to 14% range. And I calculated that if I took this job, I was going to get about a 50% increase in pay. I would have a reduction in take-home pay by about $400 a month because of inflation. And I said, oh man, this is terrible. I can't do this. So I didn't take the job. So that's what inflation does. That's what we have to be concerned about. And when you think about it, ultimately, if I'd have had an income plan back then that said, I would have more income to spend on a monthly basis if I took the job, that would have made it real easy to decide that. And it's the same in retirement, ladies and gentlemen. You just have to figure out, if we're going to create an income plan and we're concerned about inflation, how are we going to make our monthly or annual income in retirement increase? That's the key. That's what's going to keep you ahead of the game. That's what's going to help you hold on to your lifestyle. And that's what's going to help you have something called peace of mind. So if any of those three things are important to you, peace of mind, lifestyle, keep up with inflation, give us a call. 616-301-2581. 616-301-2581. Be more than happy to talk with you folks.
Well, I think this is seriously a topic that's on the mind of savers and investors right now, because we're seeing it. A lot of times, Ron, we can ignore this factor until it's right in our face with the kind of increases that we have seen in the cost of living over the past year or 2 years. And when you look at your core issues that every plan must address, this sort of hits on all of them. I mean, income, investments, taxation, healthcare, all of those things are really affected by inflation.
They really are. And we're seeing it particularly in healthcare because that's really easy with a lot of folks that are on Medicare. My wife, Nancy, helps them. Number one, the whole system is so convoluted. You almost have to stand sideways under your head to make sense of it. And she can do that. But the costs really surprise people. They really do. And particularly when we tell them that, these costs today are higher than they were a year ago. And that probably isn't going to change. So that's part of the income plan that says, how are we going to deal with that? We have to be able to create more income on a predictable, guaranteed basis so we can maintain our lifestyle. And, another issue to talk about is taxes. We kind of know that taxes are probably going to be a little higher in the future than they are today. How do I know that? Well, the current administration down there said we're going to raise taxes. Mm-hmm. And I always tell people, if a politician says they're going to do it, chances are they're going to figure out how to do it.
Let's just take them at their word at this point.
That's right. You can always believe politicians when they say two things. We're going to spend more money to help you, and we're going to tax you more so we can help you when we spend more money to help you. Other than that, I don't know what else to tell folks. So we have to deal with those two things. Taxes are just another bill in retirement. And we focus on income taxes, federal, state, maybe local, but there's a lot of other taxes that impact us. There's a gas tax. There's real estate taxes. There's all kinds of taxes. There's a sales tax. There's a tax when you buy a hunting license. There's all of these little things that tack on, and we don't really take the time to document them. But I bet if we really sat down and said over a year's time, in addition to income and state and local income taxes, anybody who would figure it out probably says, wow, income taxes are maybe the least of my worries, because there's some people that pay very little in income tax when they have a pension and Social Security, and they don't have a lot of money they're taking out of their IRA. So it's one of those things that we have to be aware of, that taxes are going to go up. It's kind of interesting when I listen to people argue about the gas tax. Everybody wants better highway gas mileage out of our cars, maybe even going electric. And wait a minute, if you're taxing gas so you can fix roads, and we all know in Michigan, they've been trying to fix our roads for the last 4 decades. So we have great hope that this next decade will finally bring about that time to fix our roads. But if the gas tax is so important and people are getting better mileage or going to electric vehicles, then gas usage is going to go down, which means taxes are going to go down, which means they're going to try to find other ways to make up for the reduction in tax revenue from gas taxes. We always know, ladies and gentlemen, it never stops. It never stops. So we have to be able to say, okay, we know that never stops. That's a given. How are we going to deal with it? Where does that come into play in our income plan for retirement? Where does that come into play? And then we can help address it then. So give us a call, 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581. Be more than happy to help you. Go to our website, Cornerstone -RP. Plug in your name, ask your question, or say, I want to talk, and we'll do that.
Cornerstone-RP.com. That's cornerstone-RP.com. 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581. Ron, as you're talking with clients right now, and I know you don't give like specific investment recommendations over the radio, but is there anything that an investor can do to help stave off the effects of inflation, either on the investment side or the income side?
That's a great question, and there is. If folks have what we call taxable accounts, and where are those? It could be a joint account, a trust account, anything that's not an IRA or 401k kind of tax-deferred account. Any one of those accounts generate every year what's called a 1099. And that 1099 lists all the different interest, dividends, capital gains, losses, everything that's happened in that account. And we call that sometimes phantom income. What do I mean by that? Maybe somebody has an individual investment, a taxable account, a joint account, trust account, and they're not taking money out of it. But they still get a tax bill because it generates inside of it, the stocks that they own, the mutual funds, the bonds generate interest, capital gains, things like that. That's all taxable every year. So if you're not taking money out of that and you're still getting taxed on it, your returns are less. So one of the things we can help people understand is that the kind of makeup you have for your investments themselves can make a difference in what your tax bill is. For example, exchange-traded funds are more tax efficient than most mutual funds. They just generally are, because there's some things they don't kick off, like capital gains and taxes, where a mutual fund will. So sometimes analyzing somebody's portfolio, we can help them find, if this is a big issue in taxes, we can help them find an exchange-traded fund, perhaps, which we use primarily in our investment strategies with clients, that mimics what they have in a mutual fund that perhaps is not too tax efficient. And we can help them make that swap. Because if you can hold down what your 1099 tax bill is, that just means you have more money in your pocket. And to get taxed on something, it's like getting taxed on money you don't use. You know, it used to happen. It used to be a big deal when CDs paid 4 or 5 or 6%. Whether you use the interest or not, you still pay tax on it, which used to really frost a lot of people. I get that. But it's the same with investments in a taxable account. You can reduce the taxes in that account if you have somebody like us help you with it. So if that's something you want to explore, talk about, give us a call at 616-301-2581. 616-301-2581. We can help you with this. We can actually show you what the expense ratios are. We can show you what you're really paying. And then we can help perhaps bring some options that will minimize or reduce the amount you're paying in a taxable account.
Well, Ron, we mentioned that inflation is a concern here and much in the news of current events, but I think you hit on another one, is that people are worried about taxes. People are talking about tax increases and how can I plan proactively for this? And again, ladies and gentlemen, the way that you do that is you get a plan for it. And if you'd like your course to retirement plan, a specific plan for you, crafted by the team at Cornerstone Retirement Partners, CFP, Ron Corser, pick up the phone and give a call, 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581. And you said, kind of in jest, to believe politicians if they say taxes are going up. But Ron, taxes, the laws on the book right now are already slated for all tax brackets to go up. I believe that when the current tax laws expire at the end of 2025, the 12% bracket goes up to 15%. So it's not just the rich that are going to be paying more in taxes.
Well, I'm going to get on my soapbox now. You just hit a hot button with me. And
I was trying to get you there.
You can, hold your ears. If you're driving, don't do that. Just turn the radio down. Come back in about a minute. Let's think about this whole issue of taxes and who's going to pay. We hear a lot in the political world about whenever there's a tax increase, we're going to just tax the rich and they're going to pay for all the new spending. Here's a real key question to ask. How do you know if you're rich from the government's point of view? Because if they're going to tax the rich, you got to find out if you're one of them, right? So here's a question. To find out if you're rich from the point of view of the government who's going to tax you, ask yourself this question. Do you have money? If you have money, it's my belief that they're going to consider you rich. So let's take a look at this. In tax-deferred accounts, IRAs, 401ks, the middle class holds, depending on who you listen to, between $22 and $28 trillion. That's a big number, isn't it? And that's a number that they can get at to pretty easy by raising taxes. So if that's where the big money is, and they say they're going to tax the rich, and you've answered the question that says, I have money, therefore I'm rich, guess who they're going to tax? Taxes in our history of our country have always started at the highest income level, but they always come down upon the middle class. They always do. Because that's where the big money is. We hear about all these rich people, and I tell people, if we just took all the money from the basketball players, Warren Buffett, Hollywood, all of those guys, Bill Gates, just take their money, don't tax them. We don't have enough money to run our country for 1 year. So when somebody says we're going to tax the rich to pay for all this spending, I tell people, remember the 11th commandment. Peter, do you know what the 11th commandment is? It's in a very, very obscure book in the Bible, Second Hesitations. The 11th commandment is thou shalt not let thyself be buffaloed. When they talk about raising taxes, they're talking ultimately about the tax the middle class is going to pay, because that's where the big money is. And that's why it makes it so important, because most of us are middle class people. There's nothing real fancy about us. We just worked hard all our life. We did everything we're supposed to, saved and scrimped, so we could take care of ourselves in retirement. It just makes it more difficult when we know the tax man's coming with a really big cutting tool to get at our money. So give us a call if you want to talk about this conversation we could have about taxes and reducing them. There's a lot of ways to approach this item. Keep the main thing the main thing. If the main thing is how do I reduce taxes, give us a call. We can help you with that. 616-301-2581. 616-301-2581. And we will go forward on this and really help you.
Ron, inflation, market volatility, taxation, all concerns, but you started the program saying that there was one main concern, and that was longevity. As longevity increases, we run an increasingly high risk of running into the next factor that all plans must address, which is healthcare. Now, the healthcare expenses are one side of it. The actual care provided is another. But at Cornerstone Retirement Partners, you have an approach where you are helping people with wealth and health. And I like that you've had that perspective for quite some time. And that is the intention, to continue helping your clients with both the wealth and health for a great deal of longevity in the future.
We do. My wife, Nancy, has her own little kind of firm within our firm, and she handles what we call the healthcare. And that can include a lot of Medicare planning, which she does. Also, the Obamacare kinds of things to get health care if you're not 65. But one of the things we always emphasize, even if you become Medicare eligible, the cost of health care, there's a cost of Part B in Medicare. You may have a Medicare sup. There's a drug program. It's been estimated that even if you don't get really sick, you just pay for Medicare, you can make it to life expectancy, you're going to spend somewhere around $200,000 a couple just paying premiums over time. It's kind of an amazing number. And that's the number that has to be dealt with when you do income planning and retirement, because it's a key component. But the other part of this is this. Let's say we live a long time. I'm one of those guys, I tell everybody, I pray to live to be 100. But I also pray to know I'm 100. Because why would you want to be 100 if you don't know? So there's a lot of reasons I want to live that long to see what happens with my family. But I suspect I'm going to need some custodial care if I make it to 100. I tell people my body is out of warranty. I got about every couple of years, I go in for some new parts and a tune-up and things like that. But I'm probably going to need a little bit of care. So all of us are probably going to need a little bit of care somewhere, somehow. So how are we going to deal with that? We always think the worst thing when it comes to long-term care issues. Oh my goodness, they're going to put me in a nursing home. It's going to be like one flew over the cuckoo's nest. They're going to hose me down once a week, whether I like it or not, and feed me gruel. That's not the reality in most situations, but it's where our mind goes. And I tell folks, this issue of long-term care, it's not just going into a facility. I mean, that happens when there's no supposedly any alternatives. But for example, Nancy's mom, my mother-in-law, she was on long-term care for 7 years or so, maybe 8 years, and she was getting it in her home. She qualified for it. Why? Because she couldn't do 2 activities of daily living, which are, she couldn't bathe herself, feed herself. The meds were a problem. Transferring was a really big problem because her body is just broken. Continence and bladder issues, things like that. If you can't do 2 of those, you qualify. And there's a lot of ways you can be cared for in your own home, which is infinitely cheaper. There's even some government programs that can be accessed by the middle class in home that make a great deal of difference on the kind of care you get. And the advantage of planning for those kinds of things, having the conversation makes it so much easier, because Nancy's mom is a widow. That means, yes, she's in a facility right now, kind of in assisted living kind of place, qualifies for long-term care, but her 2 daughters and sometimes her brother are the primary caregivers, so to speak. They're the ones that have to go visit. They're the ones that have to, go to the doctors. They're the ones that have to run errands. It's a heavy load. We are what we call in that sandwich generation, where in our generation, we're taking care of sometimes our kids and we're taking care of our parents too. And that's a pretty big load on us. So here's the key. If we as people are entering retirement do some serious planning on how we're going to deal with the healthcare issue, that not only makes it easier for us to control what happens to us. When it comes to my healthcare, I'm a control freak. I want to be cared for in my house. I want to watch football, eat pizza, M&M peanut candies, and be left alone. And I'm going to be good with that. But I want to control. I don't want to have somebody telling me what to do, when to get up and everything like that. So it's a question of control, but also we've made a provision for our kids. I don't want them to come and care for me. I don't want to put that burden on them for me. But it'd be nice if they come and visit once in a while and just let me know what they're doing. So it's really an important part of the planning process. And we can help you do that because it not only entails what are we going to do about Medicare or healthcare, it has to do with your finances because this stuff has to be paid for. It's not free. It's not cheap. So you're going to end up paying for it. So you have to be willing to deal with it. That's what makes our firm kind of unique. Yes, we can do the investment strategy and all of that, but we are a firm that also says we can help you with the healthcare part of your life, which is really important. We're also a firm that says we're not CPAs. We don't do tax returns, but we're smart enough and we have the appropriate and really cool software to help you make great decisions when it comes to evaluating investment strategies, minimizing taxes, what's it going to cost to do a Roth conversion, those kinds of things. So we can help with that because ultimately you have to put together that kind of a plan before it happens. So ultimately, where does this lead? If you're interested in having that kind of a conversation, and it is an in-depth conversation, I don't deny that. We are willing to spend a lot of time with you out there listening to us. And we'll talk with you to find out what's important. It's not something you do in one meeting. It's not something you do in one day. It takes time for us to get to understand you, to look at all the options, to create a plan that makes sense. Give us a call, 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581. And I'll leave with this one last topic. It's called legacy planning. Most people think legacy planning is all about how we're going to leave the kids and the grandkids all of our money if there's any money left to leave. That's true. But here's the other part of legacy planning, and I think sometimes it's even more important. We're going to leave memories to our children. I'm going to leave a memory to my children and grandchildren. My wife, Nancy, is going to leave a memory to our children and grandchildren. And that memory is going to be kind of wrapped around what did we do for the last quarter of our life? How did we do it? And when it was all said and done, did we leave a mess or did we leave it really easy to the point where they say, wow, I can't believe mom and dad did this. They really had it all together. So yeah, the legacy planning part we can help with. Yes, it's part of your assets. What's going to happen to your stuff? But the other part at times can be just as important and maybe sometimes even more. Are we going to leave a mess for our kids and grandkids? Or are we going to handle it so that it's an easy transition onto them? And we can help with that. We're not attorneys, but we know the right questions to ask. And we do have relationships with folks that if you don't have one, we can help direct you to that. We don't get paid for any of that, but it's an important part of the planning that we do. So give us a call, 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581. We've talked about a lot of things on today's program. We've covered a lot of ground and even, the 11th commandment. So give us a call at 616-301-2581. We can help you and we want to help you.
Well, as we began the program talking about longevity and how important that was to recognize as a factor determining your financial success and the 6 core issues that all plans must address, reminding you, ladies and gentlemen, that Ron Corser has plenty of resources available, the full list of the countdown to retirement, the 10 steps to prepare for retirement, the 8 moments to move your money, 7 financial myths, 6 core issues, 5 planning mistakes to avoid, 4 approaches to long-term care. There are a number of different resources and reports that we have talked about over the preceding weeks and months and years here on the program. They're all important to deal with. And if this has sparked anything in your mind that says, hey, this is a topic, this is an issue, this is something that I need to take some action on, I would like to get a plan put together, or I'd like to double check my current plan to make sure that I have these addressed, pick up the phone, give a call to Cornerstone Retirement Partners, 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581. Go online, cornerstone-rp.com, cornerstone-rp.com. They've been putting on some outstanding educational, informative webinars, videos available all over social media. You should absolutely check those out. If you'd like to be included on notifications to know when the next events are coming up, get in touch with them. Always here as your resources. Grand Rapids area savers and investors is the team from Cornerstone Retirement Partners, 616-301-2581. And Ron, we always appreciate the time, the effort that you put into making sure that savers, investors, and those who are serious about their financial future throughout the area have the information, have the knowledge in order to make well thought through and informed decisions.
Well, I've enjoyed today, and I hope folks listening have gotten a kind of a nugget or two. Again, give us a call at 616-301-2581. Be more than happy to help you. Other than that, you guys take care. Have a blessed week. Enjoy the summer sun, and we'll talk to you next Sunday.
Tune into Cornerstone Retirement Partners' full radio program, Your Course to Retirement, Sunday mornings at 9 o'clock at News Radio WOOD, or visit cornerstone-rp.com for many valuable resources, including those mentioned on this show and other great episodes of Your Course to Retirement.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor.
Ed Slott's Elite IRA Advisor Group is solely an indication that the financial advisor has attended training provided by Ed Slott and Company, passed biannual examinations on material covered at conferences and in webinars, and met other membership requirements, and does not constitute an endorsement of any kind. Ed Slott's Elite IRA Advisor Group members pay a fee for the educational programs that allow them to be included in the Ed Slott's Elite IRA Advisor Group. Membership does not guarantee investment success. Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services.
Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.
Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing company. Withdrawals or growth from annuities may be taxable as ordinary income in the year it is taken. Individuals should review contracts for specific details of the product's features and costs. Early withdrawals may subject the owner to penalties, fees, or taxes.